Before we begin today's episode, we want to provide a gentle but important reminder. This conversation includes discussion around suicide, mental health struggles, and emotional trauma. While our goal is to bring hope, healing, and understanding through open dialogue, we recognize that these topics may be triggering for some listeners. If you or someone you know is struggling with thoughts of self-harm or suicide, please reach out for help right now. You're not alone. In the US, you can call or text 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, available 24/7. If you're outside the US, please reach out to your local emergency number or visit findahelpline.com for international support options. Please take care of yourself while listening. Pause or step away if you need to. Now let's begin this important and heartfelt conversation. Good morning and welcome to another episode of the Good Morning Minute podcast, where we start your day with purpose, passion, and a little bit of power. I'm your host, Angelina Mojica, and today's conversation is part of our special series in partnership with the Empower Her Steps virtual conference, a movement rooted in helping women rise, heal, and walk boldly into the life God has designed for them. Our mission is simple yet powerful, empowering life purpose. Because we believe that when a woman finds clarity in her calling, everything changes for her family, her community, and generations to come. So friends, grab your coffee, take a deep breath, and get ready to be uplifted as we dive into real stories, honest lessons, and bold steps towards purpose with our incredible guest. And our incredible guest is Angie. And Angie, I will just tell you, that was a name I would go by often as a child. So I love that you're on the show.
It's funny because as a child, I knew a lot of other Angies, but as adults, they now go by Angela. So I feel like Angie is not an adult name.
And so yes, because that's my name is Angelina, and I don't know what made me decide. Like I was like, that's my name. That's what I'm going to be called. I'm stepping into a profession, so I want to be professional. Um, but in all honesty, at this point, I'm like, whatever's easiest, because even Angelina, that name gets complicated sometimes because I get called Angelica, Angela. So it's like all kinds of variations. I think I should just simplify it and, just call me Angie. That's fine.
Does anyone ever call you Angelina Ballerina?
No,
Oh,
but
I
I've
had a
heard,
I had a friend who used to call me that.
oh, hilarious. Is your full name Angelina as well?
It's Angela, but she
Oh,
would just
okay.
call me that. And it was funny because she would introduce me to people as Angelina Ballerina with like
How
no
funny.
explanation that that's just what she called me. And so
Mhm.
then the people she would introduce me to would be like, "Oh, so you're a ballerina?" And I'm like, "No, it's just a child's book." And she just calls me that.
That is hilarious. No, I'd often get friends that would be like Angelina Jolie or something like that. I'm like, yeah, no, not even close. But okay. Well, Angie, I do want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to our listeners out there today.
Yes. Hi, my name is Angie Hawkins. I'm an inner glow coach. I help women transform from chasing love and approval from things about outside of themselves to radiating confidence so they can finally feel happy, free, and loved for who they are. I'm also the author and speaker of Running in Slippers, which is a very vulnerable memoir. And the reason I wrote it is because I feel like on social media, it's very filtered and edited. And even in real life, we put on our happy face and pretend everything is fine. So, Running in Slippers is a raw tale of a really hard time in my life because I
Mm.
think we connect with people through vulnerability.
Mm. And I can't wait to dive into that conversation. And I will, before we get started, just as a disclaimer, anybody listening, this is going to be some real conversation in regards to suicidal ideations and, maybe even some experiences in that situation. So I just want to, disclaimer out there if you're listening, and just get in a place where you can be supported if you're struggling with these things. Uh, Before we get started and before we jump into the heavy stuff, I'd like to start with a little fun icebreaker, Angie. And my question to you is, what is one small thing that makes you smile?
My thing is surfing. My rule,
Oh, okay.
so once I went through my transformation, I decided as part of my self-love journey that I would do one thing a day that brings me joy, and surfing is that thing for me. And
Mm.
it's not even just part of it is the feeling because it's I love being in the ocean. I love the feeling of being on the wave, but it's just and this probably sounds cliche, but it's the whole like journey of surfing because surfing is a very difficult sport. I've been doing it
Mhm.
for 5 years and it's been really challenging. So a lot of it is also like the pride of overcoming the obstacles and learning and growing as I progress on the journey. It's actually taught me a lot about life as well.
Wow. And I can imagine because I like to be on the beach, but I only get about knee level in the water because I have all the fears of the ocean out there.
I used to be like that. Even when
Well,
I first started surfing, I was terrified of the ocean. And I think it's
wow.
healthy to be afraid of the ocean because it can kill
Hmm.
you. I see videos on,
Yeah.
Instagram or YouTube where people like they're just standing right next to the ocean and there's all these huge waves and then they get taken out by the next wave and it's like, yeah, you can break your neck if it hits you and slams you onto the shore.
Yes, and all the beautiful creatures God created that swim in the ocean tend to be. And I probably shouldn't have ever watched Jaws growing up because I think that's what killed it for me. Because I know that there's a great white out there just waiting for me. Anyways, all right. Well, Angie, let's go ahead and dive into our conversation. And I'm just going to ask you, what was the defining moment of pain or challenge in your life, and how did it impact you?
So I'll give some context because I don't want to just go straight into it, but it started in my childhood. I grew up in a home, both of my parents were very emotionally unavailable, therefore emotionally neglectful. And as an adult, and again, I've gone through enough healing that I'm able to have compassion for their situation. So as an adult, I can see it as they just didn't have the ability to give me the love that I needed.
Mhm.
But as a child, I didn't have that kind of logic or awareness. So I made my own interpretation of it, which was that of I believed that I didn't deserve to be loved. So that
Mhm.
became my overriding internal belief. And as you're probably aware, like your internal beliefs dictate your behaviors, which dictate your whole environment and what you're attracting into your life. So
Mhm.
naturally, my life was a huge struggle because I was always reaching for things outside of myself for validation. I was always trying to earn love and perform for love. And I ended up in very toxic relationships for that reason. And so there's a lot involved in that, but I'll just skip to 2017. My boyfriend broke up with me, and then my dad passed away, and
Mhm.
I was plummeted into this profound grief because I was 37 at the time, and I had spent 37 years running away from my feelings. But this was a moment of such profound grief that I wasn't able to stuff it down, no matter how hard I wanted to,
Mhm.
which ended up being a good thing because it helped me. I guess you could call it a soul searching period. I was starting to understand that the way that I had been living my life wasn't working, and I wanted to make a change and I wanted to make my life better. And I was living in Chicago at the time, and I decided that I wanted to move to Hawaii, which was well intentioned in the sense that I was trying to be happier. I wanted to make a better life. But in hindsight, it was still along the theme of I want something outside of me to feel better because I wanted the
Mhm.
move to be the thing or the location where I was living to be the thing that made me feel better. And so I moved to Hawaii and it was not what I was expecting at all. So you can't move away from your problems. So I still had the
Mhm.
same problems that I had before I moved. And then there were additional problems. For example, I really struggled with making new friends when I moved here, which was a problem I had never had before. When I moved, I kept my job and worked remotely, but then at the same time, there was like a ton of management changes that
Mhm.
actually threatened my job. So the first year that I lived here, I was in constant fear of losing my job. And this was in 2018. So it was before remote work was the trendy thing to do. And then the other big thing that happened was I bought a condo as soon as I moved here in an attempt to like show how committed I was and how all in I was, which again, I think was well intentioned, but I think I was just like rushing into it. And my brand new condo, about a month after I lived here, a shared pipe in the building backflowed into my bathroom sink and flooded my entire condo.
Oh,
So
wow.
all of the things I just described, that was just the first few months. And then there was like a 2 year period where it was just like thing after thing. Like my grandma died. I just all these situations. And again, because I was reaching for things outside of myself to feel better, and all these things outside of myself were unraveling and falling apart. Therefore, I started unraveling and falling apart on the inside. And
Mm.
then COVID happened, which I don't think I have to describe why that was stressful. But then during COVID, I got romantically involved with someone, and then it ended up that he was lying to me and
Wow.
all the stuff. So I felt super betrayed. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back because again, for like 2.5 years, it was just thing after thing after thing.
Mm.
And I just couldn't take it anymore. And I had a total emotional breakdown. At the time I was taking, I think it's pronounced clonazepam for my anxiety.
Okay.
And these pills are so strong that I would take a half pill before I went to bed, and a half pill would knock me out cold for 8 hours. So I had a newly refilled bottle of 32 pills, and I took the entire bottle because
Oh,
I
wow.
was just everything. All I remember was just how hopeless I felt because I think we've all had the moments of, I can't take anymore, this sucks, blah, blah, blah. So there was all of that, but it was just the nothing has been going well for years, and I just couldn't see the possibility of anything ever going well again. And I
Mm.
just couldn't take it anymore and wanted it all to end. And so I was unconscious in my bathroom for a day and a half.
Oh, wow.
Somehow I texted a friend. I was totally blacked out, so I don't even remember texting her. She
Mm.
picked me up and took me to the hospital. I spent another day and a half in the hospital. And after I was released from the hospital, my phone was off, so I turned it on and I had been offline for 3 days. So that I had a bunch of texts, but one of my friends was especially concerned because she was hosting a workshop and I didn't show up and she was concerned that if I was okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I called her when I got home and I there was a lot of shame around what had happened, so I didn't want to tell her, but like the emotional intensity was just so high. It was like I couldn't even try to pretend everything was okay. So I told her the whole story and I ended with, I can't believe I didn't die. And her response was, it's not your time. And it sent a cold chill through my body because it was just so profound because I knew in that moment that I had a purpose because a lot of people don't get second chances in life. And there
Mm-hmm.
I was, like standing there talking to her. So in that moment, I was like, I know I have a purpose and I'm determined to figure out what it is.
Wow. I just want to say thank you so much for being so vulnerable and sharing that because there's so much shame in the idea of, suicidal ideations, attempts, those things, because it's almost like the whole, what's wrong with you? Like, why would you do that? It's the judgment that comes from it. But I mean, prior to us recording, I shared a little bit about, my own, struggles with that. And I remember exactly, being at 18 years old and with my first attempt and going, what's it all for? Like what's it all for? All this stuff is happening. The future's so bleak. I couldn't even see a future. And at this
Yes.
point, I didn't have anybody stepping in going, no, you've got some things going on for you and stuff like I just was like, what's it all for? Like I was ready at that early age to just be like, I'm done. I'm done. So I get it and I totally understand. Um, wow. And then to have such a message so profound that's like, it's not your time, almost as if you're hearing God's voice through another
Y-
person.
Yeah, because, and I hate to say it, I might have tried again
Mm,
because into going back to your point about like the mindset, the reason I talk about this, because it's not easy, but I do talk about it
Mm-hmm.
because other people feel the same way. But yeah, there's shame, there's stigmas because you probably feel the same way. I get
Mm-hmm.
really triggered when I hear people say that suicide is selfish. But the mindset that you and I both described, you're just like in this other world. And it's that whole feeling of like, there's no hope for the future, that sheer hopelessness that consumes you. It's
Mm-hmm.
almost like if your leg was cut off and you were bleeding out from your leg, you wouldn't be thinking about, oh, I need to save myself so that my family and friends aren't upset. You know what I mean? You're just so
Mm-hmm.
focused on the pain, you're not thinking about anything else. And that's like really what it's about. And yeah, so I talk about it because it's
Mm-hmm.
really not selfish. You're just in this place, and because we're not talking about it more as a society, I think other people don't feel that it's relatable to some people, which it's not to some people, but
Mm-hmm.
there are safe forums like this where we can talk
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And even working in child welfare, like I've seen those progressive steps towards, that suicide could possibly be in the forefront of the mind through like cutting and self-harm and withdrawing, and even so much so as documenting their big feelings, like I feel alone, I just want to kill
Mm,
myself, like those things that are out there, and people writing that about themselves, and so I know that the stigma behind it sometimes is like, yeah, they're not really wanting to harm themselves. That's not really, they look at the age and they don't see it as relevant, being young or whatever, but it happens, and it's happening more frequently, especially with our younger kids. Um, so yeah, we need to build an awareness. We need to be comfortable in having those conversations and asking people, like when you see those signs, being able to intervene and be preventative, and asking people like, is this what you really want? Is this what we're doing? Do you have a plan?
yeah.
So that we can start supporting and bringing in medical interventions, or counselors or whatever they need, so that they can find that an alternative to their solution, where they're at, their circumstances, a solution to their circumstances. Wow. So you hear this message, and then you're like, okay, there's a sense of purpose on the other side of that. So what was the healing process like? What was the growing part of this season in your life?
So yeah, that message I think single-handedly changed my life because
Mm-hmm.
it was just so profound. And I don't think because I was just in this alternate mental state, I don't think I would have came to that conclusion on my own,
Mm-hmm.
that it wasn't my time. And so I decided she's right. And I also decided that I needed help. And traditional therapy had never worked for me. So I
Mm-hmm.
decided to invest in a coach and work on myself that way. And so the long story short, working with the coach is how I learned to develop my sense of happiness and fulfillment inside of myself. But on my very first call with him, he asked me, if you could do anything and didn't have to worry about money, what would you do? And the first thing that came to mind was this book I had, an idea I had, which is now Running in Slippers, the book that I published. But at the
Mm-hmm.
time, it was just an idea, but I was too afraid to put myself out there. But I was telling him, I was like, I want to write this book and I want it to be a like really raw, relatable account of life and not just the filtered and edited version. And I
Mm-hmm.
want to go on speaking tours around the world and have these, safe spaces where we can talk about things that we don't normally talk about. And I was
Mm-hmm.
going on and on about my vision for the book and the speaking tours. And he was like, did you see how lit up you just got when you were telling me this? And I did, because again, like my state going into the call was like I was basically just hanging on for dear life. And I did
Mm-hmm.
notice my state change. And I knew the work I was doing with him was going to take some time to like really see some progress because I was at rock bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And and this is another reason I tell my story, because I don't want other people to hit rock bottom like I did. Because if you see yourself going down this path, get help now. But I was at
Mhm.
rock bottom, so I knew it was going to take time from working with the coach. And in the meantime, I needed a sense of purpose. So that's
Mhm.
when I decided, okay, I'm going to start writing this book. And that's what I started doing in the
Mhm.
meantime while I was making progress with the coach.
It's something about purging yourself from the hurt and the pain, and you often hear journaling, like coaching, because I'm a coach
Yeah.
too, like journaling. um that's such a good tool, because you are just emptying out all the negative thoughts. I mean, you're constantly repeating them in your head, and if you don't put them to pen to paper, they remain there. And then you talked
Yes.
earlier about belief systems. Well, you're building your identity based off of the things that are reoccurring in your head, the self-talk that you repeating to yourself until it becomes so embedded, and it's a core belief. And so then now your life is going to search for that reality based on what
Yes.
you think about yourself. So it's so important to understand. So it's something so powerful behind writing your story. And I appreciate that you're like this raw, unfiltered, uncensored story, because I'm very much the same way. I'll go there based on my audience and whatnot, because I do it without shame and without guilt. I'm removed from that at this point.
Yeah.
Um, but it's important. It's important to be that vulnerable and that sincere, because it truly sets you free, and there's so much freedom behind it. But because again, shame and guilt tries to cover up some of those things, and let me censor some of these things because I don't want to hurt the other person's feelings, or
Exactly.
I don't want to receive the judgment behind it or whatnot. Wow. Okay. So Angie, here you are now. You're taking book tours. You've got this book out. You're standing on stages and you're speaking. Like, how much of this story shaped who you are today?
A lot. And actually, it's funny because putting that was the first time I had ever said out loud, I had ever like told anyone about the book idea, and then it
Mhm.
happened. And I have also been talking about doing speaking tours and whatnot. And now I'm actually working with a speaking coach so I can do that.
Yeah.
But all of this stuff, it actually worked really well in conjunction with the actual coaching and inner work that I was doing, because one of my limiting beliefs or fears is I'm afraid to allow myself to be seen because I grew up in a really critical household. So,
Mm.
like, putting my book out there, because
Yeah.
again, like my worst mistakes, worst decisions, all my lowest points are in this book. And it was so terrifying to put myself out there. But what I've realized is that it's actually really relatable for people. Because again, we're not talking about the hard things that are going on in life. And I've had people reach out to me and say, oh, this exact same thing that you wrote about in your book, like that's happened to me. And
Mm.
it's shaped who I am because again, to what you were saying before, I used to be the person that filtered myself because I didn't want to offend anybody or wanted them to like me or whatever the case
Mhm.
was. And I'm noticing now that I'm unfiltered that it actually makes me more relatable to the people who are
Mhm.
meant for me.
Mm. Mm.
So that's been like a huge part of my journey too.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because I used to be like this aggressively raw person. Like, I'm just gonna tell you how it is and blah. But healing is not a linear process. It requires some twists and turns and loops and all those things. I have learned to come back and be more compassionate and love-based when I communicate, and so you don't have to filter anything out. You're operating from a sense of compassion and love, not only for yourself but for others. And so that has been a game changer for me when I do presentations and speaking events and things like that, because I'm like, okay, I'm gonna love this audience, and so let me be compassionate to where you're at right now. Um, and so I love that, but it's great because it really is. The truth will set you free. It's in the Bible as well. So being comfortable with your story, so comfortable that you can speak it and be so free in that moment because you have to, I mean, sometimes you have to kind of you feel it again in certain moments that are still kind of tender. You do feel it, and so you have to be able to understand where you're at as well when you're having to present those things.
That's a good point because that was hard about writing the book. I actually
Mhm.
had a lot of people make comments to me about like, "Oh, it must have been so therapeutic to write a book about your experiences." And I'm like, I actually felt like it was re-traumatizing at times. And again, in telling my story, there are times I can just tell it matter of factly, but there's other
Mhm.
times, like depending on how deep the conversation goes, I get wrapped up into that very moment and how I
Mhm.
remember exactly how I felt. And like there have
Mhm.
been times start crying retelling the story.
Mhm. No, I get it too. So I started writing my memoirs back in 2019, and every chapter, like I'll get through a chapter, but it takes me months to go back to it because I'm like, wow,
That's
I just relived that.
the
That's hard.
hardest part is rereading it. It's not writing it. Because
It is.
when you write your own book, you have to read it a gazillion times. And I also recorded an audiobook, and I think rereading it and saying out loud is the hardest part.
Yeah. No, yeah. And so like those that can, they're like, yeah, I just, I hammered this out in like 3 months. I'm like, God bless, because whoo, just try to get a chapter out. Like that was hard for me. And just reliving moments in my life that were so tender and so hurtful and so painful. Like, yeah, I have to tap out a couple of months before going back into it. So it's a work in progress. It'll get out there eventually.
Yes,
Uh,
it will.
um, so Angie, let me ask you, if someone was maybe in that moment of hopelessness, much like you were, at one point in your life, what kind of advice would you give them?
That's a good question because I've been asked this before, and the first thing I do is put myself in old me's shoes when I was in that moment.
Hmm.
Because I don't know if anyone could have really said anything to me to change my mind or change how I was feeling. But the
Hmm.
first thing that always comes to mind, like, I just needed a hug, like
Yes,
just that
yes.
presence of someone being there. Like, so
Uh-huh.
if I ever encountered someone in person who was feeling that way, I honestly would just give them a hug. I don't, because it's
Mm.
kind of like, before my dad passed away, if someone had a parent or someone in their family that passed away, I never knew what to say. And then after my dad passed away, I like still didn't know what to say because there's nothing you can really say to like, because I think the intent is like, oh, I want to make them feel better. I want to change
Mhm.
how they're feeling. But it's okay to grieve. And just like it's
Mhm.
okay to feel hopeless. And I would just give them a hug because that in itself is a sign of hope. That's how I feel.
Mm. And as you're speaking, my thing would be, I just needed someone to say, I love you.
Yes,
I love you. Like, and it's hard because when we talk about someone being in the midst of it as a fixer, as a healer, as someone that wants to help others, we want to come in there and go, oh, don't think that way. Don't you see all the
exactly.
great things that
And
that
that makes it worse.
and you're like, get out of my face, right? I don't
Yeah.
need, I don't want to hear you right now. Um, and that was a hard lesson for me at one point as I stepped into the coaching field because I remember sitting with a friend who was going through, a divorce, and they were telling me their feelings and stuff, and I'm like, oh, you're a great person, and this, that, and the other. And they looked at me and said, you know what? All I wanted to hear was, man, that really does suck. And just sit in it with me and don't try to
Yeah.
fix it for me. And I said, oh, okay, I can do that. Do that.
Yeah, empathy goes a long way because
Yes.
when you're trying to like fix how someone is feeling, that just like exacerbates because you don't like how you're feeling. When you're feeling quote unquote bad, you already don't like it. And if someone's
Hmm.
trying to get you out of that, it just like makes the tension
Hmm.
worse, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Angie, so what does living with purpose look like for you now?
Living with purpose means I call it, this is my coaching concept. I call it shining from the inside, which
Mm,
there's different levels to it. So the first level is being loving yourself, finding your happiness and fulfillment from within and shining that from the inside out. And that in turn affects everyone around you because when you're shining your own light, then you're inspiring other people to shine theirs. And
mhm,
on a greater level, you're contributing to raising the vibration of the entire universe because there's a lot of fear propaganda and anger and all of those things going on in the world right now. But when you
mhm,
are, it's like picking up litter. Sometimes you feel like just doing one thing doesn't make a difference in the big scheme of things.
mhm,
It actually does. Just like one small act is like sending this good energy into the universe. So the
mhm,
simple act of being a better person for yourself and being happy within yourself and finally feeling free of all these, societal expectations and like how we were talking about before, like I have to filter myself so I fit in and just being free of all of that and being free to be yourself. Like that's
mhm.
what fuels this happiness and fulfillment and light inside of you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And I say too, like, just like you said, when you shine your light, you give permission for someone else to do the same. So, yes, shine on, my friends, shine on. Uh, so as we're starting to kind of round out our conversation, Angie, I do want to ask you a question of legacy and impact. So if today was your last day, what would you want to be remembered for?
I would want to be remembered for my transformation to show
Mhm,
people that it's possible because there probably are people, maybe not at their rock bottom hopelessness moment right now, but could be heading down that path. And if
mhm,
hopefully they don't get to rock bottom, but I hope if they did, that they would remember conversations like this or other conversations that I have had so that they see a future is possible and it's not all bleak and hopeless.
mm. So true. And for anyone out there that is struggling with suicidal ideations or anything like that, you matter. Hear me say that. You matter. And that, that ideation is only a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Remember, this is a moment in time. It's not something that's going to be lifelong or anything like that. It is a moment in time. It too shall pass, but you matter. You do. So, um, my last question to you, Angie, as we get ready to close our conversation, is if you could leave just one bit of truth or maybe a word of encouragement to someone listening today who's still trying to figure out their purpose, what would that be?
I think the best thing to do would be go back to your childhood and find the thing, if you haven't already found it, find the thing that lights you up.
Mhm,
Because, for example, I loved to write as a child, and even all through high school, I was a writer. I even won some writing contest. And then I went to college. I studied finance. So I didn't write for like 20 years. And then when I finally started writing again, it made me so happy. And I think, and again, my purpose ended up being my book, which spawned into other things. And I think, and again, it goes back to my shine from the inside concept. Like we're all born with this light inside of us, but then society or family systems slowly start to dim that down and you forget about it. But I think
mhm,
what lit us up as children when we're like the most intuitive and we're way less impacted and jaded by society as we are as an adults, like that's the thing that lights you up is your purpose. And even if the answer isn't clear, like if you go back to your childhood and your thing is painting, that doesn't mean your career is an actual painter. Maybe it's teaching or whatever, but I think the answer lies in there somewhere. So find the thing that lights you up. And if you don't know, go back to when you were a child. And I think that can start you on your path.
mm. Good advice. Good advice. Very wise words. Angie, let's say we have a listener out there that's like, you know what? I'm vibing with what Angie's putting out there, and I think I want to connect. How can they connect with you?
They can connect I'm on Instagram, Angie Hawkins 808. I respond to all my messages. My website is runninginslippers.com. Running in Slippers is my book, so there's information about my book there, but there's also information about my coaching services. And you can reach out to me. You can my first call with new clients is free. And I will talk to you about whatever you're struggling with.
Mhm.
And the purpose of the call is to help you because Shine from the Inside is not for everyone. And maybe it's not a good personality match for us to work together. But I know plenty of other coaches, I have other resources. So if I cannot personally help you, I will find someone who can. Because again, I think it's important for all of us to be doing this inner work and shining our lights. So the entire purpose of the call is to help you. And if Shine from the Inside is for you, then I would love to work with you.
Wonderful. And if you didn't catch that information, that's okay. Just go to the social media post along with this interview and you will find the information there.
Oh,
Um,
one last thing.
yeah.
Sorry. I don't know when this is airing, but I'm actually running a promotion for August 2025. It's $1,000 off my coaching program. So will this be
Oh,
aired by the end of August?
no, actually it was November, but
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Um, if you reach out to me and say you've heard me on this podcast, we'll work something out.
There you go. All right. Well, Angie, I want to say thank you so much for sharing your heart, your story, and your light with us today. It's conversations like this that remind us that purpose isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, growing through the things that we go through, and understanding every step matters. Here at the Good Morning Minute podcast and through the Empower Her Steps movement, we believe every woman has a calling worth discovering and a voice worth using. So wherever you are today, friend, remember your purpose is powerful and you're not walking alone. Until next time, keep rising, keep trusting, keep walking boldly into the life God has designed for you. I'm Angelina Mojica, your life coach, sending you much love, much peace, many blessings.